This is the Five Lights Podcast. Yes, it is the Five Lights Podcast, the first one. We've been talking about this for a couple of weeks now, not very long, but we've actually decided to do the first Five Lights Podcast just before the race season starts. So some exciting things to talk about. We've got a pretty jam-packed show, to be honest, looking at about 30 to 40 minutes of stuff. And in that show, we're going to be talking about the Five Lights Podcast, what we plan to do with the podcast, where we plan to take it, and why we decided to do one. And then we're going to get into the F1 news, and then we're going to get into the teams and a bit about the race calendar, and then we're going to wrap it up. I haven't introduced myself yet, so I should probably do that. I am the host, or the main host. I'll introduce you to the second host in a second, Dan Herrick, and I am co-hosting this with my brother, literally, my F1 fanatic friend, and my compadre, Ben Herrick. How you doing, Ben?
Hello, everyone.
How you doing, Ben?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good, thanks. So,
I'm ready to talk some F1.
Yeah, let's talk some F1, man. I mean, this has been a long off season. Obviously, it finished in November. We're starting again in March, but it seems like an eternity until the F1 starts again, right?
Definitely, yeah. I've been waiting far too long.
Right, so let's sort of talk about the Five Lights Podcast then, and talk about what we're going to be doing. We decided to do one because, well, we wanted to do something a bit different. All this F1 podcasts are so serious. Everyone's so straight down the line. Everyone's so serious, and it is a serious sport. You know, there's a lot of technical stuff into it, but it can be so much more fun. So we want to do a bit of a more fun, informative, and interesting, and fresh. Yes, fresh. I said it. I'm bringing it back. Fresh podcast about Formula One. So we're going to try and do 2 a week in a race week. So we're going to do one on a Sunday night / Monday morning, ready for your sort of Monday morning commute, and we're going to do one on a Thursday night, sort of Friday morning, for the Friday morning commute. We're doing this one a bit late because we've had a few sort of issues and we've done a bit of rush planning. But so this is the first one. So go easy on us. This is the first time we've ever done this, ever done a podcast. But we've got some good stuff coming up for you. And if you can just sort of bear with the sort of technical issues to start with, it'll all be better from here. I promise you. So we have other things as well. We have the Five Lights Twitter feed, which is at Five Lights Pod. We're on Facebook. So just search Five Lights Podcast, and we have a website which is www.fivelightspodcast.com, and that's with the number 5, not spelling the word 5. And as I said, this is the first podcast, so we don't really have an intro theme at the minute. We're playing around with some stuff, so feel free to email us in a theme that you think would be good for a Formula 1 podcast. Something a bit instrumental, something that sort of sums up Formula 1, that would be cool. If you see our logo and you think, yeah, I could probably rework that, then feel free to rework that as well. This is a fans-based podcast. This is not just about us. Send in your ideas. This is all going to be fed from by you. So just send us your stuff, tweet us, Facebook us, email at fivelightspodcast.com, and just send us your stuff and we can sort of adapt as we go. Right, so that's enough about that. Are you looking forward to this, Ben? Let's get this done, shall we?
Yeah, let's go with it. Go for it.
So Ben is the newsman. He's the sort of guy who's on the pulse of the F1 news. So I'm going to hand over to him now for the news.
Hello, everyone. As Dan mentioned before, I'm Ben, Daniel's F1 fanatic brother. Obviously, it's our first podcast, and we've missed a bit of news since the lights went out in Abu Dhabi. So we're going to get straight into the main big topic news at the moment. And really, number one on the list is Alonso's incident, the second test in Catalonia. He had a bizarre crash in where he had a side-on impact into the inside wall at turn 3. He was briefly unconscious and suffered temporary memory loss. McLaren have since confirmed after the crash. Alonso, after the incident, he told doctors at the scene, and this is a quote, "I'm Fernando, I'm in karts, and I want to become a Formula 1 driver." So Alonso was under the impression that the year was 1995, some 20 years ago, when, I know, I say it, I was born in that year. So Fernando is obviously recovering. Doctors have said it requires a 21-day resting period for this type of injury. They don't want to risk another type of injury, a concussion or brain injury, in which he could have some repercussions on top of that concussion, and that's a big no-no really. So McLaren, Alonso and his doctors have decided to sit out Melbourne, and he's going to get back into his training scheme, ready for Malaysia, where he will undergo beforehand a series of medical tests to prove that he's physically ready for Malaysia. You may be wondering who's going to be driving for McLaren. Sorry, Dan. Just
finish off that bit. I'll jump in a minute. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. We may be wondering who's going to be driving for Alonso in Melbourne. And McLaren's test and reserve driver Kevin Magnussen, who you may remember drove last year for McLaren, will be driving in Melbourne. And as far as we know, only Melbourne at the moment to replace Alonso while he's recovering.
But that's not the only thing that's come out of this whole accident, though. There's a shroud of controversy surrounding this accident. It's not like a standard accident. I mean, I'm all for protecting drivers from concussion. Concussion's a big injury in any sport, but there's something McLaren. There's something they're hiding in there. They're not telling us everything that's going on here.
Yeah, the information that we have at the moment is very bleak. The information we have, I think a lot of people have said, including David Coulthard, who's written a column on the BBC F1 website, that he thinks it's very bizarre. This isn't, as McLaren have said, this isn't a everyday incident in Formula One. He had a side-on impact with the car where he hit his head twice. It was at fairly slow speed for that corner for a Formula One car, and McLaren, as you say, McLaren are keeping it quite cagey and they're not releasing much information. And I understand it's a very private issue for Alonso, but to be spending 3 days for a concussion where he's apparently fine and all clear is something that's not adding up somewhere. So I'm sure probably this weekend we'll know maybe a bit more. But very, very fishy at the moment. And
this is the thing, because when they sort of said that he'd had this accident, Ron Dennis showed the telemetry of Alonso's accident to Jenson Button, and Jenson Button has come out, and this is a quote, he's come out and said, that's a bit odd, because he was running wide through the corner, and apparently he slammed the anchors on, which is sort of out of character for Alonso anyway. So there's something there, because they were saying that he could have fainted at the wheel, that he could have had an electric shock. So, I mean, if Alonso's got underlying health problems, then obviously we feel for him and all that, but I think McLaren are shooting themselves in the foot by hiding it too much, and they should really just come out and say, look, this is what's happened. Well, there are cards on the table. He's not racing because of this issue, but he will be back. Because I don't think the fans are going to get on his back if he has got an underlying medical issue. They'll be supportive of him. So I don't understand what McLaren gain from hiding anything from this accident.
Absolutely, as you say. We're going to be respectful of whatever comes out of this incident, but even the Drivers' Association for the Formula One drivers, they've written a document which they've released, stating their concern about this incident. They want to know more about it, so they know the safety implications of this incident and if it could occur again. And there was even talk of a boycott, which has been, hushed and put away for now, but people want to know more. It's not just the public, it's the FIA as well, and the drivers. But going back to what you said about the incident and about Alonso's own health, I mean, there were reports that he was fainting at the wheel or he was electrocuted, but apparently he was braking and downshifting quite heavily up until the impact. So there's just information, just as we said earlier, it doesn't add together. He was obviously conscious up until the impact, apparently, according to reports. And I think we can probably rule out electrocution, because I think F1 Formula One drivers, as far as I know, they are put to earth in a Formula One car, so I don't think they can necessarily get electrocution. But
I know Ron Dennis is. Yeah, well, Ron Dennis he likes his drivers to do well, but I think even him electrocuting his drivers would be a bit extreme. I don't see him doing that. Anyway, so he's not going to race.
I know McLaren had a poor test and they need to go faster, but electrocution isn't the way forward.
Yeah, I don't think electrocution is the way forward for them. So he's not going to race in the first race of the season. How do you think this impacts on his championship title?
To be honest, I think it has. In terms of pure results, I don't think it has an impact at all. The only impact I can see it having is actually physically on Fernando. He might not be the same again. We obviously won't know until Malaysia. But if Fernando comes back by Malaysia and he's as he was, probably the greatest driver on the grid, then I still don't think it's going to make a difference, because McLaren have had reliability problems galore through testing, and they just haven't been able to get that reliability and get that mileage to understand their car. I mean, apparently it looks very good on track. It's a well-designed car, but it's not going very far at the moment. So him missing one race isn't going to make much a difference in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, Lewis Hamilton, he didn't finish the first race this season, and many others, and he still won the title. And as you say, I think McLaren have suffered more with reliability issues than anything else. So, but it's a great opportunity as well. We don't want to make light of a situation or anything like that, because obviously it's very serious for Fernando. But it's a great opportunity for Kevin Magnussen as well to come back into Formula One and put his face back onto the race circuit and put his name back out there. Because I think actually he's better than some of the drivers that have been signed up for teams further down the field. So he could stake a claim for maybe a drive next season if he performs well at Melbourne.
Yeah, and as people may remember from last season, he finished, after the final results, he finished second in Melbourne last year. Obviously third on track before Ricciardo was disqualified, but he managed to get a P2 out of the race last year. So he proved that he can make some mistakes, but he was a rookie. But yeah, as you say, he's not to be sniffed at as a driver. He's pretty good.
Yeah, so let's move on then from Alonso. We'll keep an eye on that one, obviously, and see what develops over the coming weeks with that one. But the next one is some good news, because we always want to see more cars on the track, don't we?
Definitely. So from going to people who are going to be missing the first race, we're now going to be going to people who are going to be joining in the race, and that is the announcement that Mana Marussia F1 Racing Team are to race in Melbourne after receiving private funding from Stephen Fitzpatrick, who is the boss of energy firm OVO. Previously, Marussia F1, the team came out of administration 1 month ago and have just hired Justin King, who is the ex-Sainsbury's CEO, as their interim chairman. Their car will be using their 2014 car, but it will be modified to suit 2015 safety regulations. They passed the mandatory crash tests on Thursday last week and have been cleared to race in Australia. At the moment, Will Stevens is their only confirmed driver so far, but we are expecting his teammate to be announced pretty much imminently. So as we're speaking now, he could have been announced.
Yeah, because they were saying, we watched him on the F1 show, and they were saying Monday by the latest, and Monday has come and gone, and we still haven't really heard a driver. Who do you think it will be? Who's your money on?
Well, there's a lot of talk at the moment. There's several drivers on the shortlist. There's Guido van der Garde, who we'll get to a bit later in the show. There is Kevin Magnussen, obviously, but he's now preoccupied at McLaren. There's Jean-Eric Vergne, who is the reserve driver at Ferrari. There was Esteban Gutierrez, who is the test driver at Ferrari, but he has come out and said that this seat isn't in his plans for 2015. And there's a number of drivers who did test last year in free practice sessions on the shortlist. So I think they've got quite a few to pick from. It's maybe who they think's the best, or dare I say it, who brings in the most money. I think
unfortunately, I mean, we want to see 22 cars on the track, ideally, but with the financial disparity going through the grid, you're going to see the teams at the back. They're going to unfortunately take the drivers who pay the most money, and it's going to decrease the value of the show somewhat, because you're going to see drivers who may not necessarily have, dare I say, earned their spot. But hey, it puts an extra couple of cars on the track. Is it the best racing? Nah, probably not. But hey, it puts more cars on the track. So Will Stevens is going to be racing, so it's another British driver to look out for. Who do I think will go there? Oh, goodness knows. I'd like to see Guido van der Garde, to be honest. I think he'd be good there. I don't think he will though. And I'd always love to see Kamui Kobayashi come back, but I don't think he'll come back either. But I don't think he's even been rumoured. But I'm just throwing names out now. Let's have Nigel Mansell back. Come on, let's do it. Let's reinvigorate the retro style. Let's bring him back with his moustache. But on a serious note, it's good to have Manor back though. Right? It's good to have extra teams on the grid. Although they're sort of at the very bottom and they're always going to come out of Q3 first. It's good to have extra cars or Q1 first. It's always good to have extra cars on the grid, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And they've even come out and said that the latter part of this season they will have a full spec 2015 car. So they had a base package last year in which to build for this season. It's not going to be a great car, but it's going to be something that can be improved upon, and hopefully by the next season or two, they're going to be with the midfield teams or higher. And obviously we've got Haas F1 team next year coming in, so there's going to be even more cars, which is always good, as you say. It's just can they be competitive? We don't really want to see back markers, but it is a good news story. They've done really well because they were down and out really a month or so ago, and they've like a phoenix risen from the flames. So
yes,
it's a good news story for Formula One.
It's a great news story. It's good to have more cars on the track and more to Marussia. Good luck to them for the 2015 season. So let's move on to the aforementioned Guido van der Garde, and he's got a bit of a gripe with his former employer, right?
Yes, it was announced on Thursday last week that Guido van der Garde has lodged documents with Victoria's Supreme Court, which claim that he was unfairly dismissed by the Swiss team last year. The case was heard in Melbourne on Monday morning, but a ruling will not be made until 10 a.m. on Wednesday, which is going to be 11 p.m. Tuesday our time. On Wednesday, the court will rule whether van der Garde will be driving for Sauber in Melbourne this weekend. So it's a bit of a funny one. I don't really see what he'll gain from it and how it's really going to turn out. I mean, I don't even know if he's kind of shot himself in the foot really, because teams will be looking at him, like Marussia that we've just spoken about, will be looking at van der Garde and saying, do we want a driver who's going to, sue us at every opportunity he gets? And, fair play to van der Garde, he might actually have a legitimate reason, as we see, but we don't know the full ins and outs of what was said between van der Garde and Sauber last season.
No, it's a difficult one. I don't really know what to say on this one, to be honest. I mean, we'll just have to see what plays out in the courts here. Good luck to Guido van der Garde if he has got a genuine gripe with Sauber, but it sort of detracts from the racing a little bit. So let's just sort of wrap this one up and get Guido van der Garde back in a car and get him racing again, because he's a talented racing driver.
Absolutely, yeah. He's good. He proved that when he was with Caterham. But going back to Sauber on this one, they seem a bit dismissive about it, and their lawyer Rodney Garrett has come out and said that Mr. van der Garde has no experience driving the C34 Ferrari, which is of course this year's Sauber, and will not have sufficient time to learn, and also that it would take too long to go through the seat fitting process. But I don't see any weight to that argument from Sauber, because just look at Will Stevens and Marussia. They haven't tested. It's a brand new car. Does that mean Will Stevens now can't learn and drive because he hasn't driven the Marussia car, which hasn't even turned a wheel at all yet? The seat fitting process can take 2 days, 3 days. So Sauber, I don't really know what they're on about, really. I
think this was a case of where Rodney Garrett should have just kept his mouth shut and just gone, we'll just see what happens in court, shall we, guys? Rather than going, he's never driven the car, he can't fit in the seats. Just shut up, Rodney Garrett. Just be quiet on this one. And
maybe
just
Rodney Garrett's looking for the seat. I don't know.
Maybe he is. Maybe he wants to drive for Sauber next year. But he should have just kept quiet there. That's just a stupid thing to say, and all it does is add weight to van der Garde's argument. Anyway,
exactly.
Enough of that. Let's get on to some contract signing with the world champion.
Yep. As you may have heard last season, Lewis Hamilton has left his previous management company, and he's now negotiating his own deal with Mercedes. He said last week that he was in the final stages of agreeing a new deal with Mercedes. It was rumoured that Hamilton would be on £150 million over 3 years, which isn't
totally
too bad,
worth
to
it.
be
Totally
honest.
worth it.
But Toto Wolff has come out in his own way and slammed the media for this £1 million a week deal. I mean, it's silly. Really, I don't really believe that. I mean, Lewis Hamilton is, he's a superstar. He is the Beckham of Formula One, but £150 million over 3 years, it's not really a Formula One contract, really.
No, I mean, they just need to wrap him up, really. The thing is with Hamilton, he's an emotional guy, so he needs some stability. So let's get him wrapped up to Mercedes. Mercedes want him. Let's face it, Mercedes are going to want him. He's the world champion. He's arguably the best driver on the grid in the best car. So he's going to bring in the most money. Let's make it happen. I don't think £150 million is over 3 years is a good investment for anybody, but let's wrap him up. And I think he could make some serious cash here. He could make some serious cash.
Well, I think him and Fernando are the top earners in Formula One and have been for a while. They're on now, I think, 20 million a year. So to go from 60 million over 3 years to 150 million years, there's not even corporate companies like Mercedes can find that kind of money that quick.
It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money.
Warrant spending that much.
Yeah, so hopefully he gets that signed up pretty quick, and we can just get on with him for the next few seasons. I don't know where he would land if his contract wasn't signed.
It's difficult to say, really. You've got a lot of people have now moved to new teams for this season, so that's a lot of years taken up, especially with the big teams. So I think Lewis has even said that his deal he's going to sign with Mercedes is going to be for a few years. So I think it's been one of those years where we see all the big drivers move, and that'll be it for a few years, and then we'll see it all again 2017, 2018.
Yeah, he's not going anywhere. He'll stay at Mercedes. Anyway, so the next one, Pirelli have confirmed the first 4 sets of tyres.
That is correct, yeah. Pirelli came out Wednesday last week with their tyre nominations for the first Grand Prix of the season. I think it's the same as last year. So Australia, China and Bahrain are going to be the soft and the medium compounds. And Malaysia, which is going to be the second race, is going to be the medium and hard compounds, obviously, because it's such a hard, demanding track and very, very hot and humid. So obviously the hard and medium compounds required there. But we suppose we'll probably discuss that in future episodes of the podcast as we preview races.
Yeah, we'll go into that a little bit more when we get to sort of the race previews. But some good sets of tyres there. Can we not this year talk about how bad the tyres are, how good the tyres are? I mean, it makes for great racing. Let's face it. I know this tyre management thing, people have an issue with it, but does it not make for great racing?
In my opinion, yes, because it adds another dimension to how good the driver is. We see drivers like Lewis Hamilton, Rosberg, and Bottas last year who could really reserve their tyres and make them last. Even Daniel Ricciardo, and then it's just another thing to prove how good a driver can be. I mean, as you say, a lot of people don't like it and they just want to see kind of go-kart racing where it's all same kind of spec car, same tyres, same fuel load, and they just go neck and neck, which is, it's fair enough comment, that makes for good racing. But for me, these tyre compounds, add strategy and difficulty for drivers, which I think it does make for a good spectacle.
Yeah, so moving on to the next one, a big bugbear for me because it just drives me up the wall. Vettel and his helmet.
Yeah, well, I think we're talking about his racing helmet in that regard.
Let's hope so.
Last Tuesday, Sebastian Vettel said that he was happy to keep changing his helmet design as long as any imposed fine, if that is the punishment for changing his helmet design, would go to charity. Obviously, new rules for this season, which we'll be discussing in a later podcast. Helmet designs cannot be changed at all this season. And everyone obviously knows Sebastian Vettel likes to change his helmet every time he has breakfast or whenever, every 5 minutes. So I think he's had about 60 odd helmet designs or something like that in his F1 career, something stupid. So it's one of those stupid ones that it's news, but
I mean, your helmet is your brand. It's your signature. I mean, what would people say if Senna changed his helmet every race? You know, that's his signature now. Everyone remembers the yellow helmet that Senna had. Why he needs to find a design and stick to it. Come on, Vel, just play the game, will you? Just play the game. Find a design. Get someone to draw one for you. Draw it yourself. I don't care. Just pick some colours, stick them on your helmet, and stick to it. End of. I've got to move on from this one because otherwise I could be here for ages because it's stupid and he's an idiot for that. He's a great driver, but he should not do that.
Hopefully he's listening as well, so he'll get that message.
Yeah, hopefully so. And if you are listening, thanks for listening. Thanks for downloading the podcast. And you're a great driver. But just stick to one helmet. Yeah, just one helmet. Anyway, right. So, and the last bit of news is a light bit of fun news from the Sky Sports F1 team.
Yeah. Martin Brundle of Sky F1 has created his own circuit with the help of Sky Electrics. The circuit features at least one corner from every circuit of this year's calendar. The circuit is a figure of 8 with over 40 turns. I think it's about 44 turns in total. It's absolutely huge. And this week and last week, the Sky F1 team were racing each other across the circuit, trying to get the fastest time. As far as I know, Martin Brundle is the fastest at the moment.
Yeah, I saw that.
People who watch the Sky coverage will see some kind of footage on that and some kind of feature film on that. But I thought it was brilliant news. Brilliant.
I think it's a good idea actually, and I think this is we've talked about this before when they design a new track. Why do they not take elements of previous tracks that have been awesome and take them to the new track to create when they create these new tracks? I know obviously space is an issue and they want everything to be different and individual and create these new special corners and special moments on tracks, but why not take sort of some great elements like Copse Corner from Silverstone and take that and put it onto another track and try and build up these super tracks?
Well, this is my bugbear for Formula 1 at the moment, is the new circuits that are coming to Formula 1. I don't want to see street circuits. I'm not a fan of them at all. We've obviously got Baku in Azerbaijan coming to the calendar next year, most likely. And there's even talks of, having one in London. Just leave it. Racing is for purpose-built circuits, not on a street, unless you want like Need for Speed or that kind of rubbish, in my opinion.
Yeah,
but
careful, steady.
Keep it to purpose-built tracks like the classic Silverstone, Suzuka, Monza, Hockenheim, Nürburgring. The list is endless for all the classic ones. We just want them back. But again, money talks at the end of the day, I suppose. And as we're seeing this year with Germany, they might not be even hosting a Grand Prix, even though they are on the list.
And you say that money talks there, and it's right. But look at like the Indian Grand Prix and how much money was thrown into getting that done. And it's not even on the calendar anymore. It gets taken off. It gets wiped off the calendar, because the track's not interesting enough. So why not actually sit down and take some time and design a nice track, test it out properly before going, yeah, this is the one we're going to do for F1. And then, because they must have lost so much money from that sort of investment and building.
Yeah, same with Korea as well. It was built in the middle of nowhere. It doesn't have a fan base there. And it's going to be the same with Baku in Azerbaijan. There's no fan base there. There's a lot of money in Azerbaijan, which is why they're there. And I suppose the argument is, there's not going to be a fan base if they don't race there. But that's what television is for. If you try and boost the popularity in that country through TV and through demonstrations, then that's how it's going to become popular. Then that's when you have a track there, not the other way around.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's wrap up the news. Just got one quick item to add to that. Susie Wolff has been announced that Susie Wolff will be driving in the tests at both Spain and the British Grand Prix later on in the year, which is great news for Susie. Hopefully she can put some extra laps down than she did last year at the British Grand Prix. It was a shame to see her go off so early. So good news for Susie there.
Yes, and she did a day in testing. I think the second test in Catalonia. First day she had some time there. She obviously had a crash with Felipe Nasr, which is a bit odd. But yeah, she's got the 2 in-season tests to drive for, and I think she's also doing the Silverstone practice session along with the German one, I believe. But yeah, all the best to her. And she says she's a really good driver, and she's been an asset to Williams.
Yeah, she has, and maybe she can be the first female Formula One driver that we've had in many a year. It'll be good to see her on the track. So that's the news. Anyway, so we've done the news. We'll make the news a regular feature. We'll be doing some more of that. Maybe we'll do it a little bit shorter in the coming weeks, but we've had so much to catch up on since the lights went out in the last race of the season. So let's get on and let's just have a look at the teams and the driver makeup. We'll just have a quick look through, have a look at some of the newer drivers, and sort of give a little insight into who we think is going to do well this year. So Ben, do you want to kick it off with let's go with Mercedes, obviously world champions. The driver lineup hasn't changed. Looking good for this year, right?
You'd have to say even better than last year. The W05 was, exceptional last year, as we saw, and was, apart from on 3 occasions, unbeatable. But this year, from having, followed testing, they look like they've got a second in hand.
Do we think that's going to start detracting from the racing somewhat? I mean, obviously we love to see Lewis and Nico go head to head with each other, and the racing is awesome when they go head to head with each other. But do we think that seeing those 2 cars maybe pull away from the pack is sort of going to ruin the spectacle somewhat? Or
it's a valid point. I can see why a lot of people would believe that, but last year the season was based on Lewis Hamilton versus Rosberg, and it was a big news story for all sports, not just for Formula One. It was covered on the main news, it was covered everywhere, and now we're going to see a rematch of 2 heavyweights going against each other again to see who can win and who really is the best. So they're going to pull away from the pack, but it's going to be 2 races in one, if you like. It's going to be Mercedes versus Mercedes, and then the rest, who all seem quite tight together. So for me, no, I don't think it's going to detract, and it's going to have that off circuit drama with it as well. So for me, not really, but for those who say it will, I can see where they're coming from.
Yeah, so it's going to be awesome to see those two going at it again this year, and we think the closest team behind them was going to be Williams. Do you say?
It seems that way. Obviously, Williams have the Mercedes power unit as well. Very quiet in testing, very confident, and they even packed up early on the last day, so that shows how confident they are.
Wow, that's cocky.
They got a lot of mileage in. 2 great drivers in Felipe Massa and Valtteri Bottas, and yeah, I think they're best the rest. But as I said, it looks close between the other teams as well. So I think it's, in that respect, the best of the rest is going to be much closer this season than it was last season.
I love how confident that is. Hey guys, we're going. We've done what we need to do. You can just keep driving around. We're done here. We're just gonna pack up and go home.
I think as well in the second test, Valtteri Bottas, on one of his days, he did, I think, 40 odd laps solid of going out of the pit lane, doing an out lap, and then coming back in and doing pit stop practice. They were just doing that for 40 laps solid. That's all his day consisted of.
Nice. Like it.
So yeah, expect Williams to be probably and hopefully winning some races.
Yeah, we want to see Williams back up there, one of my favourite teams of all time. So the next team along the road, do we think will be Red Bull Racing? And I'm a little bit disappointed they haven't kept the livery they used in testing, actually. I quite like the whole black and white camouflage look they had going on.
Yeah, it was a bit of a shock seeing that initially, but it's grown on me, and other people I've spoken to have said it's grown on them as well, and they'd like to see it stay. But with sponsorship and everything like that, then it was going to be the traditional yellow, red, and purple, which does look nice as well. But yeah, the testing livery was pretty good to look at. But yeah, they've got a new driver lineup this year in one driver, Daniel Kvyat, who's been promoted from
your favourite driver from last year.
He is. He's younger than me, so he won't be mentioned much in the podcast from me. But he is a good driver. We saw that last year at Toro Rosso, but it's good to see how he's gonna be compared to Daniel Ricciardo. He probably won't be that good because I've said he's younger than me, and well,
you got to let it go, Ben.
Really.
When you get older,
you know, can he?
when you get older like me,
get to that age where I realise, you know, professional athletes are younger than me,
yeah,
which is annoying. But
you get to that age where you look at every athlete and go, yeah, they're younger than me. Or when they say, oh, he's 26, he's in his prime, you're like, no, that's not right. I'm 26. Come on.
No, it's not. He's got a few more years.
He's got 20 years left. Come on, he's got loads of years. So we think Red Bull are going to be good this year. Maybe not touching sort of Mercedes good, but they're going to be there again. How do you think Danny Kvyat? Come on, in all seriousness, I know he's younger than you. Obviously, big pressure point for you there. How do you think he's going to stand up against possibly one of the drivers of last year against Daniel Ricciardo?
I think Danny Kvyat. I think he'll do well, Kvyat. I don't think he will outrace or outqualify Daniel Ricciardo over the season. But I don't think he'll be squashed, if you like. I think he'll do well, but I suppose with the Red Bull, it doesn't look as good as last year's. Aerodynamically, it looks fine, and reliability-wise, it looks very, very good, which we didn't see last year in testing. But in terms of performance and the Renault power unit, I'm not too sure on them yet. We haven't seen any kind of suggestion that, you know, they're going to be as quick as they have been. Quick, they'll be quick, but as quick as, you know, we expect Red Bull to be, I'm not so sure. So I expect them to be definitely behind Williams and probably even the Ferrari as well.
I'm talking about the Ferrari. That's going to be the next one on. They've also got a new driver in the former world champion Sebastian Vettel. When they launched the car, it was called the Sexy SF15T. I'm not so sure about the whole sexy thing. I don't like the whole stretch nose thing they've got going on with their car, but they could be a bit of a... I mean, it's weird saying this, but they could be a bit of a surprise this season, Ferrari. But should we take too much away from what we did in testing?
All guns... Well, they came out all guns blazing in Jerez in the first test. You know, they were lighting up top of the timesheet, and then they kind of fell away in the second and third test. They weren't that reliable, and they didn't have much of a performance in terms of lap times. And you know, everyone says that we can't read too much into lap times, but there is, you know, some kind of performance evidence there in their lap times. But you know, towards the end of the testing, they picked it up again, and they were doing race runs that were quite quick. And I agree with Arriva Bene, the new team principal, that it's a sexy car. I think it's probably only second best looking to Mercedes, to be honest. I think it's very good looking. And it's going to be a better car for Kimi Raikkonen as well, by the looks of things, which would be good to see him back again and being competitive. And it'd be good to see how he compares to Vettel. Obviously, we had the debate last year of Raikkonen versus Alonso, which, you know, came to nothing in the end. But will we have, you know, something to look at in Vettel versus Raikkonen this year?
And it'd be interesting to see how much Raikkonen puts into this year, because sometimes you get the opinion that he's not really bothered. He's just like, yeah, I turn up, I do race, I go home. That's what I want to do. So we'll see how many years he's got left in Formula One. I mean, I really like Kimi Raikkonen. I think he's one of the best drivers to have graced the Formula One track in many a year. So hopefully he'll stay on a bit longer, and hopefully there'll be a bit of a tasty race between him and Vettel this year. So we'll move on to the next team down the road, already shrouded in a little bit of controversy. We spoke about them earlier, but McLaren, with their driver lineup of Alonso and Jenson Button.
Yep, obviously McLaren this year have changed the Honda power unit, going back to their 80s and 90s car. They were Mercedes last year, but they've really struggled in testing since Abu Dhabi, when there was a week's testing at the end of the season last year. I think they've only managed think it's 380 odd laps from must be 14 plus days of testing. And
Yeah,
to
they
put
did.
that into some kind of perspective, Force India, who only used their 2015 car for 2.5 days in testing. So in 2.5 days, Force India managed 380 laps, and McLaren from 14 plus day have only got 386 or something like that. So they've really struggled reliability wise. So the pace looks like it could be there as long as they get reliability, but it could be a very frustrating season for Button and Alonso,
Yeah,
slash Magnussen.
yeah, it'd be a shame, man, if they sort of struggled, because I think everybody in Britain's got a soft spot for McLaren. They were like I think their best years in a long time was when Button and Hamilton were there. That was the awesome years for McLaren, but they've just sort of so inconsistent. It's a shame to see them floundering like they are at the minute. So come on, Ron Dennis, pull some of that 90s magic back out the bag, and let's have McLaren back at the top. Now we go into this next group of cars, and it's sort of a mishmash of who's going to come out on top. So I'm going to start with Lotus. So break down for me the Lotus team and what we can expect from them this year.
Lotus have changed their power unit as well this year. They've gone from Renault to Mercedes this year, and already they're reaping the benefits in testing. They've been much more reliable, and they've been really quick. I think they've set the fastest lap times in 2 of the tests, and I might be wrong, but I think they've also been clocked the fastest as well. They've been the fastest car on pure straight line speed in testing, so I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do.
Yeah, let's face it, they can't do any worse than they did last year. They were awful last year. So it's good to see that they're putting some laps back in, because it's such a great historic racing name as well, Lotus. And I've got a little bit of a soft spot for Romain Grosjean. Not so much Pastor Maldonado. I think he's a little bit of a loose cannon. I think they could do better than him in the race seat, but obviously he brings a lot of money in. But Romain Grosjean, I think you give him a good car. I think he could be quite tasty and push quite high up for some decent points this year.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. Romain Grosjean, obviously he was considered a loose cannon a few seasons ago, with crashing all the time, but he seems to have passed that trait on to Pastor Maldonado for the time being. But I think Grosjean can get some solid points and maybe even push for a podium, depending on the race, how it goes and what circuit they're at. So yeah, I think they can be pretty good this season.
So moving on from Lotus, a team that I'm interested to get your thoughts on, actually, Ben, considering what you said about Danny Kvyat not a moment ago. Toro Rosso, the sort of tester team for Red Bull. They've got 2 extremely young drivers this year, and this is going to be very interesting to watch.
Yeah, the junior Formula One team, Toro Rosso. They've got the 2 drivers.
The kindergarten F1 team.
Yeah, they've got the youngest driver lineup ever in the history of Formula One in Max Verstappen, who is 17, and Carlos Sainz Jr., who is 20. So they're a bit inexperienced. Verstappen hasn't really had any single seat, time. Carlos Sainz was in FP3 last year, so or GP3 rather, last year, so he's got some experience. But to be fair, Max Verstappen seemed very, very comfortable and very, very good in testing. He didn't put a foot wrong. He did an extraordinary amount of laps. So I'll be looking forward to actually seeing what he can do. I was a bit sceptical about whether he could do it physically in terms of the G-forces he'll have to sustain, but he did quite a few consecutive laps in testing, so I don't think he's going to struggle in that aspect. And I actually have got a bit of soft spot for Carlos Sainz Jr., having watched testing in TED of Sky F1 and his notebook. They did an interview with him, and I took a bit of a liking for Carlos Sainz Jr. He might even be, my next favourite driver. I don't know. We'll have to see how he gets on. But he is my age, so he's fine.
Wow. So you're justifying the fact that he's your age. That's good. It's good that you can relate to him because he's your age.
Yeah.
We'll get you. Oh, if this podcast takes off, maybe we can get you two together and get you a meal or something like that. That'd be good. That'd be good for you to catch up and talk like that. But
maybe we can swap. I can be the driver and Saints can be your co-host on the podcast.
Maybe so. Maybe so. Who knows? But Max Verstappen, a lot's been made of the fact that he's only 17 years old. He's a young lad. And Carlos Sainz is only 20. I just wonder later on down the line when the racing gets a bit heavy and they get into the sort of they have to secure points and they have to have a little bit of maturity. Where does that maturity come from within the team? I think they'll have a little bit of advantage because Red Bull's the big brother to them. But do you think Danny Kvyat and Daniel Ricciardo are going to want Verstappen and Sainz knocking on the door, going, "Hey, you couldn't give us a little bit of advice, could you? Because we don't really know what we're doing."
I don't think Kvyat's going to be willing to give much advice, really. As you say, he doesn't really want them knocking on their door. But going back to what I said earlier, obviously Max Verstappen and Carlos have done a lot of laps. But again, to highlight what you said, they haven't done it in heavy racing. They haven't done it in race format. So when there's 5 cars all around them at the first corner, are they going to go round in sync, or are they going to go and do a Pastor Maldonado and spear him at the first corner?
Yes.
Who knows?
Who knows? So we wait patiently and wait eagerly to see what happens in Melbourne with those two. Going on to the next team down the road, and arguably the ugliest car to have ever graced the Formula 1 track, the new Sauber and their 2 drivers. Just break down the Sauber team for us, Ben.
Yeah, Sauber are going to be racing their tank of a car this season, the C34. As you say, it's not very good looking. It's a horrible yellow and blue to obviously suit the sponsor Banco de Brazil, who is linked through Felipe Nasr. He's going to be a bit of a pain because obviously he's got a name similar to another driver on the grid in Felipe Massa, so that's going to cause a few problems. But they seem extremely reliable, but no pace. So a lot of these teams have got one thing and not the other. So it's and they haven't got 2 great drivers either, in Marcus Ericsson, who never won me over at Caterham, and Felipe Nasr, who was in GB2 last year and he lost the title to Julian Palmer, who's now a test driver at Lotus F1. So
I think Felipe Nasr's a good driver. I think he could do some quite good things. But as you just said there, what did Marcus Ericsson do last year to win over another racer? I mean, he wasn't. I think towards the end of the season, he was toppling Kamui Kobayashi in the Caterham, but I don't think there's anything there to get excited about Ericsson. I mean, we'll see what happens this season. I don't want to write him off too early, but he didn't really didn't really get me excited last year.
No, and who knows? Guido van der Garde could be their driver this weekend, so one of them could be binned in the next couple of days. Depending on how all that works out.
Yeah, so let's go to a team who are facing a few problems both on and off the track, and that is Sahara Force India. Nearly didn't look like they were going to make it at all for this whole season, let alone for Melbourne.
No, as I mentioned earlier, they only used their 2015 car in the last 2.5 days of testing. They didn't go to the first test at all, and they used their 2014 car in the middle test, and they put a lot of the blame at the door of Marussia and Caterham, who had ties with suppliers, Toyota in the wind tunnel, and other suppliers in Formula 1. So they've been a bit delayed in what they can use and what they can get to make their car. But it's saying all that, it's very impressive that they managed to rack up 360 odd laps in just 2.5 days straight out of the box. That's pretty impressive, and they've got a really good driver in Nico Hülkenberg. And Sergio Perez isn't too bad. I wouldn't say he's a great driver yet, but he's not bad. He did pretty well at Sauber a few years ago. So
if you've got depending on who you watch, I mean, whether it's BBC or Sky Sports in the UK, I don't know who you watch in other countries if you're listening from internationally or abroad. But if you've got access to a tablet or an iPad and you can listen to the radio chatter during a race, just it's worth listening just to listen to Nico Hulkenberg and his race engineer squabbling and bickering, because they did it so many times last year. Where I think Nico Hulkenberg can be a little bit of a prima donna on track and then argue a little bit. So just keep your ear out for that if you've got an iPad, because that is very entertaining to listen to. But as you say, two talented drivers. We'll have to just wait and see about Force India. They could be a bit of a surprise package considering where they've come from.
They've even come out and say we don't expect to be fast. We're going to start to fall behind now, and I think that's the case with a lot of teams. They're gonna come good and competitive at the end of the year, which a lot of people might moan about, and it's going to deprive of the spectacle because teams aren't going to be that good in the beginning, and it's going to have repercussions for the spectators at the end of the year. But I think they'll be okay. And I think they'll get maybe the odd point or two. They'll be fighting with Sauber and Toro Rosso by the looks of things. I think Lotus have got the midfield. I think that's theirs for the taking. So Lotus have got to push in for the points, and Sahara and Force India have just got to stay there really and keep at it.
Yeah, so we'll just briefly touch on Marussia because we've done a lot of talking about Marussia. Still only got one driver in Will Stevens. It's amazing that they've even made it to the grid in Melbourne. They're just going to sort of sit at the back of the grid, you think, this year?
I think we've got to expect that, yeah. I mean, they haven't tested the car at all, hasn't turned a wheel. Who knows how many laps they'll do. I mean, they've got a base package from last year. So technically, they were pretty reliable last year, and the only modifications they're making are safety regulations, which is obviously the nose and a few other areas of the car. So they could actually be. I wouldn't be surprised if they finished the first few races and give the other team something to worry about, like Force India and Toro Rosso. So they could be quite a surprise, I think, to many.
Benj pulling out the long shot there, nice. So that's all the teams who are going to be taken to the grid for Australia. We're just going to have because we've gone on quite long here. We're going quite a way. So we're looking to aim for these podcasts to be around 30 minutes to 40 minutes. As this is the first episode, we'll let it ride this time, but we'll tidy it up for next time. But we'll just quickly go through the race calendar. I'll just list all the tracks, Ben, and if you can just sort of pick out a few of your highlights for me and let me know what you're looking forward to seeing this year. So obviously starting on March 15th you've got the Australian Grand Prix, then on the 29th of March you've got Malaysia, April 12th sees China, April 19th sees Bahrain, May 10th sees Spain, May 24th Monaco, June 7th the Canadian Grand Prix, June 21st we're going to Austria, and July the 5th, make a date in your calendar, the British Grand Prix. July 19th we may or may not be going to Germany, to TBC. July 26th is the Hungarian Grand Prix. Austria August 23rd we're going to Belgium. September 6th is Italy. September 20th Singapore. 27th of September is Japan. October 11th is Russia. October 25th is the US Grand Prix. November the 1st is Mexico. The first time that one's been on the calendar for a long time. November 15th is Brazilian, and we end up on November the 29th back at Abu Dhabi, and none of that double points nonsense this year. It's just straight single points all the way around. So which Grand Prix stands out to you then, Benj? Which are your highlights of the year?
One and only the British Grand Prix. My favourite of the year, because I go there pretty much every year. I started going in 2008, and I've only missed 1 year since, which is 2012, and I hope to go again this year, but I suppose I'll have more news on that later. So that's my favourite one. But Australian, because it's the opening Grand Prix, and I'm extremely excited for just Thursday when the drivers' press conferences are going on. I'll just be glued to the TV watching that. Other races for me is going to be the usual classic ones. So you've got Canadian Grand Prix, Italian Grand Prix, Belgian, Spa, Suzuka, the US Grand Prix, which I really enjoy, and the one I'm most looking forward to is the Mexican Grand Prix, because I've never seen a race at Mexico before, and it is a previous circuit, although slightly tweaked for this year. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that. And if you do watch Sky Sports F1 and you do watch Ted Kravitz's notebook on Sky Sports F1, in the pre-season he did a feature on the Mexican Grand Prix and all the construction project that was taking place for it. And at one point in the circuit, it goes through quite a large baseball stadium, so that could be quite spectacular to see as well.
I hope they play at the same time. That'd be awesome. Extra points if you catch a ball if you're going through.
Maldonado, though.
Yeah. Could be chaos. Well, for me, obviously the British Grand Prix is a highlight for me. I remember the first time I went back in 2005. Me and my older brother went down to what was then Bridge and just listened to the cars ripping and echoing through there, and you could feel the gear change in your chest. So the British Grand Prix, and even after the change, it's still an awesome circuit. It's still got some brilliant corners, and just always provides great racing. Australian Grand Prix, not only because it's the first Grand Prix of the year, but because it always again provides drama, and you get to see all the different sort of cars and drivers emerge, who you think is going to be good. You get to see the unreliability. It's still unknown when you get to Australia. The US Grand Prix is fast becoming a highlight of mine. I do like that track. I think it's very good, and obviously the Canadian and the Belgian Grand Prix. And I really hope, beyond hope, that Germany gets a Grand Prix this year, because both the Hockenheim and the Nürburgring are classic F1 tracks, and we don't want to see them wiped off the calendar when you've got some of the awful tracks that they've brought through in the previous years. For example, Korea and India, that just haven't worked out, when you've got classics like Hockenheim and Nürburgring waiting in the wings to come through. So hopefully they come through for us. But that is a look at the 2015 race calendar. So we've sort of broke down all the races, we've broke down all the drivers and the teams for this year. In the next podcast, we'll be looking at the Australian Grand Prix. How excited are you, Benj, about that?
As I've said, I can't contain myself. I'm just counting down the seconds.
You sound like it.
Thursday, even when the drivers' press conference is on, I'll be watching that and recording that. My aim is for this year to watch everything there is Formula One to watch, to not only for my own personal benefit, but for the podcast as well, to bring news and opinions to you guys listening at home or wherever you are, work, gym, on the road.
Yes. Listen to us wherever you are. Take us with you wherever you can go. As I say, this is the first ever podcast we've ever done, so bear with us for the first one. There'll be a few technical things we'll tidy up, and we've gone on for quite a while now, so we're going to wrap up. This is it. The first podcast is done. The lights have gone out on this very first podcast. In the next episode, we'll be looking at the Melbourne Grand Prix, the Australian Grand Prix. We'll be previewing it, breaking down the new rules, and we will make our predictions for the coming season. So stay tuned for that, and we'll make a record of those, and we'll see. Maybe we'll put some like wagers on or something like that. Maybe we'll just nothing financial. We don't gamble, we don't bet, because that's ridiculous. That's silly. We are more grown up than that. We'll probably do some sort of forfeits or something like that, which are much more mature and much more fun to do.
Yes, more
and we'll
propositions than bets. Yes.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, precisely that. And we'll look forward to that, and oh man, I can't wait. It's less than a week away now. Less than a week away till we hear those engines roar once more. So thank you for listening. If you want more about the Five Lights podcast, then you can follow us on Twitter at Five Lights Pod. You can again find us on Facebook, the Five Lights Podcast. You can email us. So say if you've got an intro, or you want to rework the logo, or you've got any tips, advice, anything like that on how we can make this podcast better, then email us at email@fivelightspodcast.com, and the website is www.fivelightspodcast.com. So that is it from us. Ben, have you got any final thoughts?
Well, it's a great first podcast, I thought. Really enjoying this project, and can't wait to do a few more podcasts and bring on Melbourne.
Bring on Melbourne indeed. So that's it. The lights have gone out, and it's away we go. Thank you very much for listening. See you later.
See
Bye.
you guys.